I was 26, recently divorced, and broke. The only apartment I could afford was a damp, dimly lit basement unit in an old house on the edge of town. The landlord was an old woman who barely looked at me when I signed the lease. She just handed me the keys and muttered, "Don't mess with the furnace." I thought she meant it was delicate or something. The apartment itself wasn't much. A kitchenette, a small bedroom, and a main room with stained carpet. But I didn't care. It was cheap and I needed quiet. But I learned real quick, it wasn't quiet. The first night I heard what sounded like whispering through the vents. I chalked it up to old pipes or neighbors. But then came the thumping. Every night, always around 2:30 a.m., I'd hear a thud from behind the furnace room door. Not like a pipe expanding. It sounded intentional, heavy, like a boot dropping. I didn't go in there. The furnace room was locked, and the key the landlord gave me didn't work on it. I asked her about it a few days later. She paused, then said, "It's just old machinery. Don't worry about it." Her eyes darted away like she couldn't look me in the face. That's when I started noticing the cold. Even in summer, my place was freezing at night. Not normal basement cold. This felt unnatural, like something was sucking the warmth out of the air. Then things got worse. One night I woke up to what sounded like breathing, deep, raspy, coming from the furnace room. I pressed my ear to the wall, and it wasn't in the pipes. It was someone, or something, breathing on the other side. I grabbed a chair and wedged it under my doorknob that night, slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. The next morning I saw something carved into the wood above the furnace door. I swear to you it wasn't there before. One word, cold, scratched in with something sharp, maybe a nail. The edges looked fresh. I was done. I called the landlord and told her I wanted out. She came the next day and begged me to stay. Said the last tenant just got scared of the dark. I asked her straight up, "Who lives behind that door?" She didn't answer, just looked at me and said, "It's sealed for a reason." That night I couldn't sleep. Something about her words, "sealed for a reason," kept replaying in my head. I couldn't help myself. I had to see what was in there. I took a hammer and went at the door frame. It splintered easily, like it had been damaged before. I pried it open just enough to squeeze in. What I found inside still haunts me. The furnace stood dead center, big and rusted. But what caught my attention wasn't the furnace. It was the wall behind it. Carved into the brick were dozens of names. Each one scratched in deep. Some looked fresh, some faded, but all in the same jagged handwriting. I moved closer, holding my phone flashlight, and saw something in the corner, a shape, low to the ground. I thought it was a pile of rags, until it shifted. The figure stood up slowly. It was a man, or what used to be one. Skin gray and sagging, eyes sunken into darkness. His mouth hung open as if frozen in a silent scream. I couldn't move. He stepped toward me, each movement sounding like creaking leather. His limbs were long, thin, and wrong, like he'd been folded to fit in that space for years. Then he whispered, "You're warm." I ran. I slammed the door shut, pushed my dresser in front of it, and didn't sleep a second that night. By morning, I'd packed everything I owned. Before I left, I asked the upstairs tenant, a young woman who'd lived there longer, if she knew anything about that room. She didn't say much, just that the landlord's brother used to live there decades ago. He was mentally unstable, violent. She kept him hidden from the world. Eventually, he disappeared. They never reported it. Sometimes I still get chills at exactly 2:30 a.m., and every now and then, I dream of the furnace room and the whisper, "You're warm." I used to work as a night janitor at a small private hospital. It wasn't fancy, more like a repurposed clinic with 3 floors and barely enough staff to run it. That meant I had a lot of empty hallways and quiet time to myself. I didn't mind. Less people meant less mess. I usually put in my earbuds and zoned out. But I always hated the 3rd floor. It had this weight to it, like the air got heavier up there. I told myself it was just the old ventilation system, but deep down, I knew something was off. The worst part, room 313. It was always empty, always locked. No patient was ever assigned to it, at least not in the 2 years I worked there. And yet, it gave me the worst feeling in the world. I avoided it when I could. Until one night, I couldn't. It was a slow Tuesday, the graveyard shift. Around 2 a.m., I was mopping near the stairwell when I heard something, faint but distinct, knocking. 3 slow knocks from down the hallway, where room 313 was. I froze. There wasn't supposed to be anyone on that floor. Security logs said no patients were checked in, and the nurses were all downstairs. I turned off my music and walked slowly toward the sound. As I got closer to room 313, I felt it again, that pressure in the air, like walking into a room that hadn't been opened in years. I reached the door. Nothing. I stood there, heart pounding, when I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. From inside. I put my hand on the handle, and it turned. That door had never been unlocked before. I pushed it open slowly. The room was pitch black. My flashlight flickered the moment I turned it on, which made no sense because it was fully charged. Then I saw someone sitting in the corner. A patient. Hospital gown. Legs crossed. Face hidden in shadow. I nearly dropped the flashlight. "Sir," I said, "are you okay? You're not supposed to be in here." The man didn't respond. I stepped closer, cautiously, and that's when I noticed something was wrong. His gown was covered in dried blood, and his arms. They were crossed over his lap, but the skin looked pale and waxy, like a mannequin. I reached for my radio. The second I keyed it on, the man snapped his head up. His eyes were pure white, no pupils, just milky orbs, and then he smiled. Not a normal smile, the kind of grin that stretches too far, unnatural, and he whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." I backed away fast, slammed the door and sprinted down the stairs. I didn't stop until I reached the nurses' station on the first floor. I told them everything. They looked at me like I was nuts. Then the head nurse, a woman in her 50s who'd worked there forever, quietly pulled me aside. She said, "Room 313 hasn't had a patient in decades. Apparently years ago, a man had been admitted there after trying to take his own life. They stitched him up and placed him in observation, but he vanished. No one saw him leave. No cameras caught him. The door was locked from the inside. When they broke it open, the bed was empty, the window still shut. They searched for days, never found him. He was declared missing, presumed dead. But every now and then, staff would hear knocking from inside 313. The hospital eventually stopped assigning patients to that room, locked it permanently, or so they thought. I quit a week later. Some nights when I walk past dark buildings or quiet halls, I still hear it. Knock, knock, knock. And in my dreams, I see that grin again, and the words, "You're not supposed to be here."